Most people think hydrogen water is just another wellness trend. But what if I told you it could potentially be the missing link in healing chronic illness, reducing inflammation, and even slowing down aging? In today's bonus episode of Sunday Soul Day, I'm joined by Greg, better known as the Hydrogen Man, who went from being bedridden with autoimmune disease and heart issues to a full recovery. We're breaking down the truth about hydrogen water, why most products don't work and can even be dangerous, the number one hydrogen machine trusted by the Japanese hospitals, and how simple molecule supports gut health, brain health, skin, recovery, and so much more. Let's welcome Greg to the show. Welcome to Sunday Soul Day, Greg.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on. I have to thank Craig Smith, the GM at Holy Hydrogen, for introducing us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very grateful and I appreciate you having me on. This will be fun. I always enjoy sharing this information with people, mostly because of the transformative things that it does for them, or at least what it did for my life. And I've seen it impact a lot of people. So it's wild and it's always hard to differentiate what's good, what's bad, what's true, what's not. And so I do my best to try to
Oh,
share with people what I actually do. And I do a ton of research before I dive into something.
well, thank you so much because I know you're going to help the audience a lot. As we were talking before, there's so much misinformation out there and so many different products. And a lot of times people don't do their research. They kind of go with what's trending. So before we dive into all of that and talking all things hydrogen today and water, I would love to just, start with you. Can you take us back to the turning point in your own health journey? Like what led you to experience illness and then discover kind of your path to healing and vitality?
I mean, there's a lot of things that probably contributed to me getting sick.
Mhm.
It's a little ironic that I worked in the medical field for like 2 decades or more.
Yep.
And so I really got to see what went on behind the scenes. And I wasn't sick, obviously, at that time.
Mhm.
And I was quite disillusioned. I think I expected more. And after working with numerous doctors, specialists, and all sorts of different people, I saw the limitations. And I should say, look, today I'm not going to give any medical advice. I'm not making any medical claims. And I'm not making any claims for or against any product or products. Everything today, I'm just going to give you my opinion on everything.
Yep.
And so that's ultimately what happened. And then, of course, I myself started getting sick. And my issues were quite severe. I ignored a lot of my symptoms at first. And then they got so bad to the point where I couldn't walk. I couldn't even grab like a remote control and change the channel on a television. That's how much pain I was in my joints. And it wasn't the only problem that I had. I had some tumors in my body. Obviously, this inflammation, it appeared to also be autoimmune related. I had issues with my gut. My liver and my kidneys were just not optimal. And then on top of all of it, my immune system was just garbage. I would get sick really easily. And then when I would get sick, it'd be really hard for me to overcome like a common cold. Like it could take me a month, maybe even as many as 2 months. It just took a long time. And then on top of all that, I had a heart condition that was extremely severe that literally my cardiologist told me, this is going to be the end of you. He said, this is going to kill you unless you get an open heart surgery to resolve this. It's very severe. And I ignored it. I ignored it for an extremely long time. And, the problem is that when you're in that much pain and you're not dying, I hate to say this, but I wasn't really afraid of death.
Mm.
Um, Sadly, it's one of the reasons that I probably was sick in the first place because I had welcomed it, I guess, since I was really young. It's a really long story, but in the end, I did a lot of things, sadly, to myself to attempt to harm myself when I was really young. And one of the things I did was so extreme that it damaged my heart. I did it to myself, you know. And yes, I regret it, but I did it to myself, and I caused extreme damage. So when they kept telling me that it was going to end me, I was like, that's fine, it's okay. When it happens, it happens. What I didn't expect is being in so much pain and not dying. And that was crushing me. I was like, I'd rather just leave this planet, right? Um, but I was so tired of being in pain. So in the medical system, Western medicine, they didn't have any answers. Everything was always, and usually is, some type of medication to try to mask the pain, which by the way, didn't work. They gave me some crazy pain medications, the opioids, the morphines, did absolutely nothing. They didn't even make a dent. I was in extreme pain. A lot of my tumors were in my nerves. So I had kind of a unique type of tumors, and that's why it was so painful. And I just had a lot of problems. And to be quite honest with you, I think this happens to a lot of people. When I was at my absolute lowest point, and let's see if I can talk about this without crying. um, when I was at my lowest point, I did what I think a lot of people do is I made a prayer. And I was just praying to God. I was like, if you can just show me, I wasn't even asking for a miracle. I wasn't like, hey, magically heal me. I prayed for him to guide me and somehow give me the interest, because I have my mind is kind of weird in the sense that I can be not very bright in certain areas of life, kind of a little bit of a dummy in a lot of things. But in some things and very few things, I excelled dramatically. And so the medical data was really hard to just read over, hundreds, if not thousands of pages. It was tedious. It was boring. I wasn't interested in it. And so when I made that prayer, I was just saying, can you please guide me to try to find the answers to these health issues that I'm going through? And I prayed and said, if you do, I promise that I will share that with other people. And I promise that I'll share with the world, because I kind of assumed that whatever would help fix all these problems that I had, I kind of assumed that it would help others, at least a lot of them, maybe not everybody. And probably within about a week or two, I do not, still to this day, I don't know exactly what happened, but there was like a little switch that flipped in my mind. And I started being able to figure things out as far as health, because I used to watch a lot of like podcasts and different things looking for answers and listening to doctors and health practitioners, naturopathic physicians, all these supplements out there, all these machines out there. I spent a small fortune on all sorts of garbage in the end that didn't work. And in my opinion, a lot of scammy stuff. And I reached the point where I got frustrated, because on many podcasts, all you do is you hear one guy saying, you should eat nothing but meat. Then you have a different guy saying, no, you should eat nothing but vegetables. And then you got a guy saying, no, you should only drink alkaline water. And you got another guy saying, no, you should only drink spring water. And it's like everybody's disagreeing about what the consensus is about what you should do in order to fix your health potentially. And so I kind of got frustrated and I tried all sorts of things. Nothing worked. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to just, blaze my own trail. I'm going to start doing critical thinking. I'm going to think about what makes sense to me. I'm going to start looking at a lot of the latest science, medical data, on top of where this medical data is coming from, who's funding it, like everything that I could possibly do to figure out how to improve my health. And that's when I stumbled upon literally some crazy scientific research on hydrogen, specifically molecular hydrogen. There's so much confusion about the hydrogen thing. Some people like tout something called Brown's gas, even though there's virtually no medical data on it. And when I read the stuff on molecular hydrogen, I actually thought it was a scam when I first read it. Because for people who don't know my personality, I'm like extremely skeptical. I'm like the doubting Thomas of people, extremely skeptical. And so when I read the data, I thought it was a scam. And I continued to read the data. I actually read it for almost 4 years, because when I was reading it, I kept thinking, not only does it sound like a scam, but even if I was interested, where am I going to go to get molecular hydrogen? Go to the corner drugstore? I mean, how do I take it? What are the levels? I don't understand protocols, let alone how to make it. Because then that became actually one of the biggest, most important aspects of this whole thing is I literally went to Japan and studied on every production method of hydrogen, because they're not all the same. Some are better than others. Some are definitely safer than others. Some, in my personal opinion, are really bad. In fact, in my opinion, will potentially harm you. And so I had to learn everything. I ended up taking such a deep dive, but this was many years in the making. I'm kind of giving you everything in a
No, that's
condensed little
perfect.
thing. I was so desperate that I'm like, I got to get my hands on hydrogen, and just to try it to see if it would work, because nothing was working. And that's when when I really figured it out, not just hydrogen, but clean water, because you use clean water as a carrier, or water in general, as a carrier for the gas.
Mhm.
So that's one aspect of it, though. You can inhale pure hydrogen gas also. So the whole thing was really a long story. And I finally figured it all out. Like, even if I were to give you one example of how my brain was thinking, for example, water. So everybody's telling you, drink spring water, drink this water, that water, all these different waters, I thought to myself, first of all, how about just clean water? Like, why isn't anybody talking about how clean it is? Why is everybody talking about the pH or it came from some magical spring? What about just clean? So then I actually have a third party lab test right here. And there's pages. If you were to look at the amount of different chemicals or different things in water, I mean, I got pages of this stuff. It's unbelievable.
Scary to think that all of that is in water, you know?
Yes, I mean, that was with my critical thinking. I thought to myself, I need to prevent anything that's coming into my body that potentially is causing harm too. And the big ones are water and your air. I mean, these are the big ones. Then you get into food, and that's a big one too. I could tell you some sneaky shenanigans that water filtration companies pull, hydrogen companies pull, maybe even some supplement companies. I mean, it's got really bad. And I learned what goes on behind the scenes because I had a lot of people. I started doing my own YouTube channel to share what I did. And I've had so many people offer me money to try to promote certain products or get involved in business. And I wouldn't do it. I stayed true to my original prayer, which was I will share with people what worked for me and what I personally do. And I put a lot of effort and a lot of money to figure out this all out, including doing regular blood work on myself to make sure, because one of the parts of my protocol, there's pieces to my protocol, because good health is not just one thing. Good health, it's like a car. You can have the biggest, baddest engine with the most power in the world, but if you don't have any tires on the car, I mean, what good does it do you? Or if you don't have, a good suspension or brakes, or it's components that come together in order to reach that achievement of good health. And one of them is overcoming nutritional deficiencies. And for people who don't know, almost everybody is deficient in something. So that was one of my goals, to overcome any nutritional deficiency. And on it goes. The story was quite long. I had to learn every water filtration modality, every hydrogen production modality, how I was going to choose to eat, because everybody argues about what you should eat. And my blood work in the end was kind of crazy because I was doing it every 6 months. And I literally had a doctor call me that had experience of over 30 years with blood work. And she scared me because in the world of medicine, for anybody who's ever worked in that world, you know that you don't want to get a call after a test. They only call you with bad news. If it's good news, they don't call you, because otherwise you'd be calling too many people. And when she called me, I got really worried. And she told me, she said, look, calm down. She said, everything's fine. She said, the only reason that I'm calling you is because I've been doing this for over 30 years. And she said, never in my life, she goes, not once have I ever seen blood work like yours. She said, your blood work is so phenomenal. She said, I actually want to know what you're doing because I have so many sick patients. And I've encountered this a lot with doctors, naturopaths, even YouTubers, which I won't name, who come to me because they want help because they're sick. But they never want to admit it, obviously, publicly. And I understand that.
Well, it sounds like your journey has been just really remarkable in a lot of ways, not just the fact that you have found solutions, which most people go their entire life not finding, but then also too, like, I love that first have a deep relationship with God, and that you are living up to that promise and turned your pain into purpose and sharing with others. It's so incredible. And I think that's what really, when you can get to that place in your life, it fuels you, differently, and just you helping others is such a testament to who you are. So first, I wanted to thank you for going on that journey. And then more importantly, sharing it with others, Tell me a little bit about this. Like, first and foremost, what is molecular hydrogen? And is this natural?
Yeah. So first of all, it's just a gas. So it's kind of like oxygen is just a gas. And one of the things that I did a lot of things in order to create my protocols. Yes, I looked at the science of things, but I would also look at nature. So have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France?
I have.
And so they have the healing waters of Lourdes, and a lot of people drank the water, had miracles. They thought it was all placebo. They started having doctors literally look into it, and they figured out that a lot of people really were having these miraculous healings. And so scientists studied the water there. Everybody said they found nothing. They literally said it's all H2O. There's nothing magical about the water, but they made a big mistake. And it was the Japanese who discovered it. And thank God, I'm telling you right now, thank God for the Japanese, because they are truly unbelievable people. I've learned a lot about them and have spent time in Japan. And they're so detail oriented that they found out that water actually had pretty high levels of molecular hydrogen, gas dissolved into the water. And that's how they started doing a lot of the scientific studies in Japan. and they rapidly saw the positive effects of molecular hydrogen. I've seen a lot of their studies. It's not like there's like 50 studies or even 100 studies. At this point, there's over 2,000 studies. This stuff is like really legitimate. In fact, they're already using it in university hospitals in about roughly 30 of them in Japan. So it's legit. The biggest problem I think is that in America it's become such a fad that already that and it's been I've been studying it for years, way before it became a fad. So the majority of people in America just they don't understand it. They think that you can just get molecular hydrogen from like a cheap little product like these. No, they don't sell them cheap. I mean, these things can be anywhere from $200 to $500, but they cost like $40. You can get them on like Alibaba or something. And to get people need to understand that there's such a thing as called medical grade gas. Now, I know everybody wants to claim, I've seen people claiming they got medical grade gases that they're making from their cheap little devices, but it's not something that's that easy. But that's ultimately what molecular hydrogen is. It's a gas.
Thank you so much. And I learned about that, the water of Lords from my conversation with Craig. So
Oh, did you? Okay.
yeah, so that's how I heard of
Isn't
it.
it amazing?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I'm going, it's happening, I'm like, just for my own, self, I'm so curious like you. So you already shared why you're a super fan of hydrogen and that hydrogen is not created equal. How do people even learn like what is the best hydrogen, and like how important is it to get the best hydrogen for your body?
It's actually really obvious. It's
Okay.
just that people don't think about it. So if I were to tell you, like, well, what are the best vegetables? You're like, well, vegetables are vegetables. They're not, because we know if we do critical thinking, one, do we want herbicides on our vegetables? Do we want pesticides? I mean, do we want these chemicals on our stuff? So we already know naturally. Plus, if you learn about farming, and it's so essential, the proper soil, so that way these nutrients that get pulled up into the food, these depleted soils are a major problem. So that's just like one example of many. So how you produce something, including gases, like I said, medical grade gases, it really does matter. And I just don't think people have thought about it enough. And this goes for supplements. I'm not going to name names again, but I've had people contact me who wanted me to get involved with supplement companies. And when I would talk to these people, they told me, I can't believe they actually told me, but they straight up told me, look, we can't make the best supplement because if we do that, it costs too much. So we're going to cut corners and it'll make more profit. And that's the way you do things. And that's the way the majority of companies tend to do things. And it's about money in the end is what I've learned. I mean, the whole health industry, I'm again not naming names, I'm just shocked at what I've learned throughout, this whole process that I've been through, because I was never involved in it, never cared about any of this. But when it became important to me, I would have never guessed in a million years that the things I was buying for my health could potentially be harming me. The thought never crossed my mind. And now it's like all I see. It's like the government, in my opinion. It's full of worms. It's a very corrupt system. And I think that alternative health is kind of going down the same path as Western medicine, which I also personally believe has become quite corrupt. And again, I worked in the system. I saw what they did, and it was heartbreaking. It was really horrible. And so but there's still good people out there. In fact, just to give you an example, I had to figure out how to make the best hydrogen, right? Meaning using the proper metals, not using chemicals, just proper hydrogen production methods, because there's different methods of producing hydrogen, and doing all my homework. And ultimately, it led me down this path because I'm not biased. I'm going to go off the data and whatever is the best, right? That's always the way that I do things because it's for my life. And then I just share with others, whatever I find. And what I found, it led me to this particular machine in Japan, and all the data on it was lining up perfectly with the medical data. And I thought, this is amazing. What is it about this particular machine that everything lines up so perfectly? I didn't know that I had stumbled upon the number one machine in the world, actually the number one hydrogen company in the world. It was a Japanese company where, if you do your research, almost every single hydrogen product is made in China. Everything's Chinese. And sometimes they do these little weird things where they'll send the parts to another country, whether it's Canada, Taiwan, Korea, and they can claim, oh no, this is not a Chinese made machine. We made it in Canada. But if you trace down the parts, they're just Chinese parts being put together somewhere else. And so, again, they're lying to you most likely, right? This is just my opinion based on all my research. The machine that I found was fully engineered, hand built, lab tested, certified, all in Japan. And I thought, this is crazy. What is this place? And I called so many hydrogen companies asking questions because I was trying to learn at the time. But I kept getting different answers and answers that didn't make sense. And I quickly realized that, I hate to say this, but nobody seems to know what they're talking about when it comes to hydrogen. And then the Japanese, when I asked them questions, they knew so much and it made perfect sense. And I quickly realized, by the way, that these products, the majority of them, they'll buy them from China and then they'll just put whatever their name they want on it, like the name of their company or whatever. So they're not actually building these things. The number one Japanese company that makes hydrogen, they have teams of engineers. They use the top people. And then I found out the story. I'm like, this machine was so different. I couldn't understand what was so different about it. And it wasn't until I found out that the guy who made it actually made it for his own daughter. And I
Mm,
was like,
yeah.
what? She was born with ALS, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and a really severe form. I mean, they told him that he'd be lucky for his daughter to make it to 5 years old. It's a very sad story. And you were just pointing out through his suffering and his daughter's suffering, my suffering. And if you put your heart into it and try to do things the right way, because that's what he did. And only in Japan, by the way, I don't think this could have worked in any other country. He got so much help from other industries and they didn't really do it for the money. And that's a thing in Japan where industries help each other a lot of times just for the sake of helping each other because they believe in unity. That's what I love about Japan too. And he had like Toyota, Yamaha, G-Shock, and some prestigious metal company that it's the only company in the world that can do what they do, help him develop this machine. Not only did he strive for the best, he ended up surpassing that and just built almost like a samurai sword. He built something so brilliant and a bunch of one-offs as far as technology that nobody had ever done before. They're all proprietary. They have their patents, the whole deal. And they ended up making the best hydrogen machine in the world. And I've used different forms of hydrogen, like of making hydrogen before I discovered this one. And the changes were dramatic. In fact, like my heart condition, nobody in a million years thought it would just go away. The cardiologist was like, we need to do surgery. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you, when I started using this new technology, the one from this Japanese guy, my heart condition went away. My cardiologist was blown away. So my heart is totally healed now, by the way. And obviously I'm alive. I'm not even supposed to be alive at this point. And I started using these techniques that I developed from numerous medical issues, not just the heart, but there's a woman, this is one of my latest testimonials. She's almost 100 years old. She had like 3 or 4 different heart conditions. They didn't even want to do surgery. They're like, you're old, you're going to die. This is what happens. We can't do surgery on a woman who's almost 100. And I have an email from her doctor and her medical records. And I post everything for free on my YouTube channel. And her heart conditions are all gone. On top of it all, they also got her off pharmaceuticals that she had been on for almost 40 years. They couldn't believe it. Even the doctor was nervous. He's like, I'm nervous to take you off these pharmaceuticals, but your body's functioning properly. I can't have you on these medicines. And so it's been an absolute miracle. I've even had videos. This is another powerful one. People with dementia, Alzheimer's, TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. The results that I've had for the brain, unbelievable also. And I'm going to go as far as saying, now, again, this is not a claim, but I've noticed this with even myself. I think that hydrogen might even increase intelligence or at least increase cognitive function because you get so sharp. So it's unbelievable. Issues with eyes, stuff that's supposed to be completely not fixable, like macular degeneration. You're supposed to go blind from that. I've had multiple people, their macular degeneration is gone. A lot of gut issues also. People with like Crohn's disease, celiac disease, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, lung conditions. There was a guy who literally smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day for 50 years, this poor guy. And he contacted me and he's on oxygen 24/7. He cannot get off of it for like even 5 seconds. And he's like, I can't live like this. And he asked me about hydrogen. In my personal opinion, I'm like, I think it would make a difference. And 6 months after doing it, he could get off the oxygen for something like, I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like 3, 4, 5 hours, something like that. And the changes have been absolutely dramatic. I've talked to, this is a sad example. There was a guy who used the wrong type of hydrogen, talking about the wrong type. The particular machine, I won't name names either, but the machine that he was using does use a chemical called lye, otherwise known as sodium hydroxide, which is actually the main ingredient in Drano. In my opinion, it's not the right way to make hydrogen at all. But this particular guy ended up causing himself lung damage. What was sad is that he was watching my channel for years, and then somebody told him, "No, this hydrogen machine is better," and they sold him on it. And it's not even close. He actually picked, in my opinion, one of the worst machines there is. And he inhaled from that thing for a year, and he caused himself lung damage. His doctor confirmed it literally weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago now. And so it's very interesting understanding, the right way, the wrong way, and proper protocols, the whole thing. And so it's been a long journey, but it's been unbelievable. The things that I've seen, I still can't believe. There's so many other stories too. That was just a few.
Sure. No, thank you so much. That was going to be one of my questions, but thank you so much for sharing. Like, and I'm so curious, like with you, personally,
Yes.
like how long did you take it before you noticed like the changes in your heart?
The heart one, once I got on the right equipment, it took about 4 to 6 months. Yeah. And remember though, the difference between me, like me and my father, for example, was that there's other changes that I definitely make in my lifestyle to try to accelerate and get better results. I didn't think it would actually work for my dad because he had so many bad habits. I mean, I won't even go down the list. I mean, so many bad habits that I think most people do, to be honest. And just the clean water and just the hydrogen still resolved his issues, but some of them took longer. Like his glaucoma took 3 years. So when he was getting his eyes checked every year, the first year they're like, you still have glaucoma. And then the second year, same thing. And so I remember at the second year, I thought, you know what, Dad? Even though it didn't work for your glaucoma, it still worked for your arthritis and your diabetes and all these other things. So I was happy with that. I didn't think it'd work for the glaucoma. And on the third year, my father called me and he's like, "Hey, I'm at the eye doctor." And I said, "Dad, I know that it doesn't work for your glaucoma. I get it. We've been looking at this for years, but I'm just glad it worked for everything else." He goes, "No, no, no. You don't understand. They just told me I tested negative." And I was like, "What?" And so some of these things take time. And I think a lot of it is because even when you get, like when he got glaucoma over 30 years ago, it took, I mean, 30 years of having this. So it took 3 years. And I've kind of noticed that for every 10 years you have something, it could potentially take roughly a year. But this all depends on the condition. It all depends on your protocols and how strict you are in other aspects of your life. But yeah, my heart condition was gone in roughly 4 to 6 months.
Is unbelievable. It's just I'm sitting here in disbelief as you're talking and sharing stories. I'm like, it's just amazing because it seems like, and again, we're not, medical, professionals in this sense, but this is our personal opinion. But I feel like everyone can benefit from this. Like, even if you don't have like severe, health issues, but you're just trying to be more healthy,
Oh,
like you
to be
speak to
honest,
that.
it's a no-brainer in my opinion, because if you think about it, it's like clean water. You know, you're like, do I really need clean water? It's like, yeah, you want to prevent certain things from happening if possible. And one of the things about hydrogen is also that it's very anti-aging and has a very positive effect on collagen production for your skin. So I used to have really bad skin, by the way, but it was pretty wild when I was learning about the anti-aging aspect of hydrogen. I could share one of the studies that I saw in Japan was this guy that they studied. They do this blood work in Japan where they can literally tell you roughly what your age is, or at least the age of your blood. And they took his blood, tested it, put him on hydrogen for 1 year, and good quality hydrogen, the one that's the real deal, proper levels, proper protocol. He did it for a year, and in 1 year they tested his blood again, and they told him not to change anything in his lifestyle. And in 1 year, his blood was 5 years younger. And so there appears to be a very powerful anti-aging effect from properly made hydrogen. And if you know anything about, I'm really big on data now, especially medical data. And remember that the two leading causes of death, or even the three, we got heart disease and cancer. And then the third one is like pharmaceutical drugs, which is crazy. Yeah, treatment. Treatment is actually the third leading cause of death. And people don't think about this. This is why I hated when I worked in the system and I see how they just throw drugs at everything. And it bugs me because a lot of the things that they were throwing drugs at, in my opinion, were resolvable without drugs. Easy stuff. I mean, easy stuff. So that really bugged me. But one of the powerful things that I saw is, let's say this was a pile of money, okay? And this is how long you will live. In the last 10 years of your life, these are statistics. The last 10 years of your life, you will spend 90% of all the money that you will ever spend on your health or like healthcare. You'll spend 90% of it in the last 10 years of your life. It's a clear correlation that as you age, you get sick. Isn't it obvious? I mean, that's obvious, right? And so that lets you know that if something, at least in my opinion, has an anti-aging effect, then it most likely would have beneficial effects to your health. Hydrogen has been shown to be extremely protective from like EMF, even radiation. But I could give you examples on how protective it is for numerous things, but I'll give you the most powerful one, at least in my personal opinion. There's two very powerful ones. One on my video 68, you can literally see the cells when they're being bombarded with like chemotherapy, like or radiation or whatnot, and how protective hydrogen shows to be with or without the hydrogen, the cells, and how it affects them. But the big one for me is a cancer drug. I don't know if you ever heard of a drug called cisplatin. So this particular drug is really bad for you. Doctors almost never use it because it literally will destroy your kidneys. So now you're going to end up needing a kidney transplant while you're dealing with cancer. It's horrible. I saw a study where they used hydrogen with a cisplatin, and the kidneys were able to maintain roughly 76% of their function, which was amazing because otherwise it would just destroy them. So that shows you the power, at least in my opinion, again, of hydrogen and how protective it is. And I feel like we need the protection now more than ever. I feel like we are really being hit hard, and they're putting stuff in everything. I mean, there's stuff in everything.
Everything, the food, the like, even you mentioned, drugs that people take, but there's also just over-the-counter stuff, like
Yep.
that that even vitamins, people are, saying these are
Yep.
natural vitamins, and they're not. There's like all kinds of stuff inside of those as well. So it's like, I personally don't take much. Like and it's just more of a personal preference. Like I tend to try and do things a lot more natural. Like, I mean, I don't even take Tylenol, unless I have like
Oh
a
yeah.
or something, but I'm just more, I always look for a more natural path. So I was really excited, when I first connected with Craig, the GM over at Holy Hydrogen, because I wanted to learn more about it. Because again, I saw, just like everyone else, it's all over the place. Like on social media, it's on TikTok. You see a lot of people promoting, again, not going to name any names, but those bottles,
Yeah.
and saying how great they are. Those bottles were actually on a very popular podcast for a long time,
Yeah.
and so many people, purchased it because of it,
Did
So
did did you hear about the lawsuit?
yes, I didn't want to get into that, but
Okay,
yes,
okay.
just
Yeah, I
because
won't say.
just because we don't know all the details. So I'm like, but
Yeah.
yes, I did read about it, and that's what I was gonna say. It's like, there's so much out there, so we want you, in addition to all the great things that Greg is telling you today, is also just do your homework, and do your research so you can learn a little bit more about it, and all of the benefits. But one thing I wanted to talk about was just your experience with Holy Hydrogen, the company that is the only company that is using this technology from Japan that you shared with us.
The biggest thing, the thing that I thought was the most amazing was the story of the guy who created the machine. And his level of integrity was mind blowing for me. And at least what I feel that I've learned looking behind the scenes is that it's not just the hydrogen industry, it's even the water industry, it's even the supplement industry. Like I said, I don't see it, in my opinion, I don't see a lot of like credibility. I don't understand. And maybe it's just because I'm silly or whatever, I don't know, but I care about people so much. It's like I want the best for people. Why would you get involved in the health field and then not try to get people the best? Now, I hear all the time from people who have approached me with companies that they can't make the best products because it's just too expensive and people won't buy them. And it's like, well, I mean, I kind of understand the argument, but I can't understand cutting corners just so people will get them to buy something that potentially is not even that good for them. So I just can't wrap my head around that. But one thing that the Japanese are unbelievable at, I don't think people know this enough about the Japanese. When I look at a lot of cultures, and this includes America, I always feel like they put money above everything. That's just something that
And
I've I've noticed that culturally. I mean, Our own government's selling this out, right? I mean, it's
100%.
crazy, right? They don't seem to care about us.
Well, and I think we underestimate the level of greed in this country, and it shows up and it's
Yes.
very, apparent in exactly what you're saying, that people are cutting corners and not putting people's health above everything, including, Western medicine. Like it's more of a band-aid on a gaping hole, but it also is to keep you sick and not heal you, which is what is
Yeah.
polar opposite of the Japanese, which is they are looking for, prevention.
Yeah, so
And
you're hitting on a really good point. Is that's what I notice about Japan is that they're really big on preventative care. They do that a lot in Japan, and they have the longest life expectancy of any industrialized nation in the world. As hard as they work, and they're workaholics, they smoke a lot of cigarettes, and they enjoy drinking, and they do all the crazy things that people like to do, and they still live super long. I mean, it really is pretty unbelievable. But the one thing about them, and I don't know if it's in their DNA, I don't know what it is exactly, but I've noticed this pattern with them. When they do something, not all the time, obviously, but the majority of the time from what I've noticed compared to any country, they want to perfect it so badly. And so, like, for example, when they made a samurai sword, do you think that they were counting, they were, counting how many dollars it's going to take, or if they're going to use a metal that's not as good? No, they go all out. They do the absolute best. They don't count the hours. They focus on making it the best. And I noticed they do this with a lot of things from automotive. I mean, there's funny stories about how Henry Ford would try to find parts on the cars that didn't break so he could design them for them to break so that they would sell more parts and make more money. I mean, they were literally finding the wrong way to do things, where the Japanese were the opposite. That's why Toyota developed such a name, because they wanted to make the cars good, and they found the parts that would break, and they wanted to make them not break. They were doing exactly the opposite of what America was doing, and they influenced the world because of that. That's when everybody's had to step up their game in automotive, and that's just one example. There's numerous examples of things that the Japanese have done that people don't know about too, like their farming. Their farming is unbelievable. I don't think people understand the master farmers the Japanese are, and the way they grow their food, the way they treat their soil. I don't think people understand. The way that they value their water is another thing. Like, you literally see fish swimming in like drains where, when it rains and the water goes in these drains. You can't do that. You won't see fish swimming around New York or wherever in these drains. The water is so horrible. And so they seem to really care about their people. People don't understand that the water is affecting our children, and nobody's talking about it. I still can't wrap my mind around.
And even think about places like Flint, you know,
Yeah.
they didn't have clean water for I don't even know how many years. I don't even know if it's solved today. It's like it's mind blowing to me that no one did anything.
People
Like
don't seem to think about it,
blows my
And I mean, I'll tell you right now, I learned so much about researching water. I didn't know we had radioactive contaminants in our water. Did you know that? Like, and did you know you can filter them out? So I should just share with people what I use for people who are curious, because it's not expensive. There's a website called mypurewater.com.
okay.
They use what I call carbon distillation. And if people want coupons, people love discounts, you can use the code uprising144K, but it's not that expensive. I mean, I have one sitting right here next to me. That's how I purify my water. Because, by the way, if I showed you one example, I'll just show you an example here real quick. So this is a third-party lab test of not only the stuff that's in the water, but after you run it through a carbon distiller. So if I were to give you an example, like, have you heard of PFAS? They're called forever chemicals. Look it up. We know it causes cancer, okay? And we know it's in the water. And remember one thing, nobody's talked about this either. California appears to have the highest rate of autism, and they have really high levels of PFAS in their water.
My
Why
gosh.
is their autism rate higher than anybody else in the US? Why? And all the kids are getting whatever they get from their medical practitioners. Why California? I think the number is 1 in 13 kids. Yeah, and I think nationwide it's something roughly like 1 in 26 kids, something like that. But check this out. So you see PFAS, right? This is the levels that were showing up in the water, like a 26 and a 7. And there's numerous different types of PFAS, by the way. And then after a carbon distiller, 0. Look at all these zeros. It takes everything out of the water. Normal water filters don't do that. And people don't understand that. And I'll tell you one of the shenanigans that they do, these water filter companies. They're using porous filters, which means as this water goes through them, and they have all these little pores, little holes, and it's stopping things. So it's cleaning the water to an extent, but if they tell you to change your water filter every 5,000 gallons and they show you a lab test, this is how good our water filter works. The lab test is coming from a machine that has a brand new filter. What happens after 1,000 gallons? And they're telling you to change it every 5,000. After 1,000 gallons, they won't show you that lab test because the quality of your water with one of those filters is going like this for
It's
every couple hundred gallons. It makes
it's
sense, right?
Yeah, no, but it's so interesting you said that. I'm not going to name the name of the filter I use, but I'm going to stop after this conversation. But but it's so interesting because I am like such a water connoisseur. Like I can taste when things are not, good and not, and I can taste when it stops working. Like,
Yep,
and I'm actually, they say that it lasts a lot longer, but I'm usually changing it so much sooner, but then it's so expensive, and it's not
that's right.
fully getting rid of everything. So I actually love that you just said this. This is like, it's really liquid gold for a lot of you out there that are, confused about all the different filters out there.
I mean, if you want to improve your health, I just don't think there's anything more important than clean water. And then if you put hydrogen, hydrogen's like just magical in my opinion. But that combination is so beautiful. But the other stuff in water, I mean, we could go on and on, but I'm just naming some of the crazy stuff. Yes, the radioactive contaminants, which by the way, here's a test again. It eliminated, the carbon distillation eliminated 99%, 99.8% of the radioactive contaminants in our water. Not to mention bacteria, viruses, parasites, different pathogens. And then, of course, I could go on about herbicides, pesticides, stuff that gets into
So
soil.
minerals too that
There,
get like that are not good for you. Like I live in Arizona, and that's
yep,
one thing that I did not realize. Like when I moved here, the water is very, very harsh. And it's
it
like
is.
minerals and gunk is getting through there. Um,
Tons of it.
Tons of it. And so it's so important to have like, at least a water softener to just even soften the blow, but it's still not like to your point, it's not clean.
When you run it through a carbon distiller, the water becomes literally the softest water known to man. The only way to make it any softer is, in my opinion, when you dissolve a massive amount of molecular hydrogen, when you saturate the water. But beyond that, carbon distilled water is the softest water, you know, and it does eliminate a lot of minerals, obviously, pretty much almost all of them. And people get worried about that. They're like, oh my God, I need the minerals in my water. I don't think people have a clear understanding about the difference between organic and inorganic minerals because some minerals that you think might be good for you could actually be what we call heavy metals. Okay. So I get the majority of my minerals actually from my food. So like 80% of my minerals come from my food, but I do purchase some minerals from a company that in my opinion is highly reputable. And all they do is get them from the ocean and they go through a cleaning process and then they eliminate almost all the salt. There's a lot of people who argue about whether salt is good for you or bad for you, but I went off of the medical data from Japan and they have clear evidence, a ton of it, that salt is not good for you. I mean, it hardens arteries, increased risks of heart attacks and strokes. And it's not that salt is like super bad for you, but the Japanese consumed a lot of salt. It's a very common thing in their diet. Soy sauce is very salty. They ferment a lot of foods, a lot of salt. But eliminating a lot of the salt, but keeping the minerals is key. And I could show you how to do that too if you want. But I have all these little techniques, and they're not complicated. They're not crazy expensive. You just need to be well informed. So if people want to like support what I'm doing, it's all free. I've been doing my best to give it all for free. So you can find me on Twitter or X, YouTube, Instagram, and Rumble. But YouTube is the number one place where I show all my latest and best data, and I have more information there than any place. But it's good to subscribe to all of them because if something ever happens to my channel, which I have been attacked a lot, the only way you're going to find me is if you subscribe somewhere else. But yeah, I share all the data for free. I don't charge for anything. I don't charge memberships, none of this. I just give you what I personally use. And I went through the work of the blood work and everything else to make sure that everything was working and did a ton of research to find good companies that are actually trying to make high quality products and not cut the corners that, concern me.
Oh my gosh, I am so grateful for you blessing Sunday Soul Day today. I learned so much just from this short conversation that Now I'm going to go down the rabbit hole and check out. If anyone missed that website, which I'm literally going to check it out as soon as I hop off this call, but it's mypurewater.com, and
Yeah.
you can use Greg's code, which is uprising144K. Did I say that right?
Yeah, and that's also the name of the YouTube channel. So if people
Oh,
look for it,
perfect. Okay,
so
amazing.
it's and the hydrogen machine. I didn't even mention it actually. The hydrogen machine, if people want to look at it, also like the best there is the holyhydrogen.com website. And I don't think that another thing that people don't understand about hydrogen is it's like clean water in the sense that you're going to use it for the rest of your life at least, right? I mean, that's the way it works. You're going to want to drink clean water the rest of your life. And if you want the benefits of hydrogen, you're going to want to use it for a long time. And I will say that when you look, when the cheap products that people don't understand is one of the issues they had with them is that they don't make, just like the water filters, the water gets worse, worse, worse. With cheap products, your hydrogen production just goes like this. So that was the problem that they noticed, is that like in 6 months, these things are making almost no hydrogen. And they were like, what's going on? And it's cheap components that are falling apart. And you're going to want hydrogen for more than 6 months. The Japanese are clearly the best in the world when it comes to understanding hydrogen. They're on another level. And not just hydrogen. I didn't know how much they knew about water. These guys are water experts. To me, Japan is the modern day Atlantis. The things that they do with water is unreal. I don't even think you could even fathom all the things. It's truly unbelievable.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for this awesome conversation. You fueled my soul today. I love learning, and I know you did it for the audience as well. We so appreciate you. And you guys, please give him a follow. Follow all of his channels that he shared. I'll be sure to link everything below. And do us a favor, leave your favorite part of this conversation, or if you learned something, throw it in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming on, Greg.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.